My name is Aretha Olivarez, and I've helped thousands of people obtain their 501c3 nonprofit status. I've also written grants and helped approve over $6 million worth of grant funding by serving on grant review boards for the City of Orlando, United Way, and several others. I've also had the privilege of traveling nationwide conducting how to start a nonprofit workshop and how to write a grant workshop for organizations such as SCORE, Central Florida African American Chamber, Life Christian University, University of Central Florida, United States Department of Labor, Bishop T.D. Jakes, and countless of others. Today, I want to share with you some successful grant writing tools. The tools will include the basics and the secrets to help you navigate through the whole nonprofit world of grant writing. The main thing you should remember is that there is always money available for nonprofits, and your organization will have to be proactive and persistent in getting it. You'll be turned down more times than you care to discuss, and then one day, all of a sudden, you'll finally get your first grant. After the first grant, the rest will be easier because you'll have discovered the process, made some mistakes, and conquered your fears. First, I want to share a few basic words or phrases. I couldn't put them all on the video because it would just take too much time. Instead, please find some of the definitions in my grant writing toolbook, or use the internet, or there are many other wonderful resources that you'll find available from local funders. You may have the opportunity to speak directly with the funder, so it's imperative that you speak their language. In addition to speaking the funder's language, knowing the grant writing verbiage will spare you some mistakes that may cost your organization the grant approval. For example, knowing the difference between phases or common grant terms such as RFP or RFA. RFP means request for proposal, and RFA means request for application. Both of those are acronyms you'll see a lot. When the government or funders issue a contract or grant program, it sends out RFPs or RFAs to agencies or nonprofits that may qualify. The RFP will list the application detail information about the particular funding opportunities, which will include the purpose, the eligibility, the restrictions, the focus area, the evaluation criteria, and instructions on how to apply. The second key word you'll see a lot is the word donee. That's the recipient of the grant, which is you. Another key word is guidelines. Guidelines is procedures set forth by the funders that grant seekers should follow when approaching a grant maker. Abstract instead of a narrative. Oftentimes you'll see the word abstract on government grants. The words kind of mean the same thing, except a narrative explains in more detail, like in several paragraphs, and then an abstract is just short, concise, get to the point, but tell your story without all the fluff. So basically in an abstract, you'll use no more than 2 or 3 sentences to describe the relevance of the proposed work or research that you plan to do to the public. And it should be written in plain language so that the general audience should be able to read it and understand it. Now, second word that you definitely should be familiar with is in-kind donations or in-kind contributions, which are my favorite, which if it's free is for me. In-kind donation is basically a contribution of equipment, supplies, or other tangible resources. Some corporate contributions may also donate space or even staff as an in-kind contributions. So that's one that you definitely want to look for. A lot of people are always looking for money, but in-kind contributions are much more important as well. Another key term that you may see a lot is grantee financial report. It's a report detailing how the grant funds were used by an organization. Many grant makers require this type of report from a grantee, which is you. A financial report generally includes a list of all your expenditures from the grant funds, as well as your overall financial report covering your revenues and expenses, your assets and your liabilities. And some funders require an audited financial report. If you get an audited financial report, that's when you're ready for the big dollars, 500, 5 million, 6 million. Also, another key word that you should remember, or key terminology, is annual report. An annual report is a voluntary report issued by a nonprofit or a foundation that provides financial data with descriptions of all the grant making activities. Basically, the annual report, it varies in format. Some of them are just typewritten documents listing all the year's grants that you've received and how you've spent them. Basically, you've seen them probably in your church. You give a financial report of what came in and what went out. But most grant makers usually ask for that, and you should do that every year with your board of directors. The next general term is general operating support. This is a grant made to further the general purpose of an organization rather than for a specific purpose or project. Now, we're going to talk about projects, but this is also called an unrestricted grant or basic support, which we'll talk about later as well. The next term is program amount. Program amount, when a funder is asking you for your program amount, they're asking you about the funds or money that is used to support a particular program administered internally by the nonprofit or the foundation or the corporation giving program. There are many, many definitions that you'll find in this grant writing toolbook. However, speaking of programs, let's talk about that. Your program or your project is very, very important. So let's define program or project. And I'll give you an example of what a funder means by the word program or project. Your project could be starting an after-school program for teens, or helping a homeless family, or starting a building for a performing arts center. Whatever the goal is your nonprofit plans to accomplish, it's called a program or project. Those words are used interchangeably. As a grant writer, you must provide a document or a proposal that provides the justification of the funding effort in order to make a case for your cause. So your project should include the following: a project summary. And this part, the project summary, you're going to basically tell them what you're going to tell them. You've heard that saying before. It should also include the introduction. And this is time where you tell them about your organization, who you serve, why you serve them, when and how many you serve. The introduction should include your mission and your vision statement, and you should set out to clearly answer the who, what, where, when, and how of your fundraising efforts. But remember, make your words paint a picture, because this may be the first time the funder has heard of your organization. Another thing that you need to pay attention to in the grant writing is the need statement. This is the perfect time to provide a clear description of the needs in your community or your center. In this area, you have to make your case strong. This makes your application stand out or makes you more competitive. Provide statistics for your geographical area served and more details in a narrative. So this narrative should also outline how you'll use the requested funds to accomplish your objective. You can use this section of the narrative to detail any financial or any in-kind donations that you may receive, because they clearly want to know if you have partnership. Are you the only one you're asking for just their money? They want to know if you have some other resources. So make sure that you document any and all other resources available to your project. Doing this will help you validate your ability to carry out and accomplish the project. A key word also that you need to pay attention to is your objective. Your objective is kind of where you bridge the gap from your needs statement and the narrative and explain basically the eventual outcome, what the eventual outcome will be. It'll be explained by your project activities and the how you will carry them out. Another word that you need to pay attention to in grant writing are your methods. Your methods basically means you're explaining the methods of your objection or your outcome. This will show the funder that you have a well thought out plan. The methods that you use discuss a progression from start to finish of your program. For example, if you plan to help with job training skills, detail how you plan to offer your services, how you reach your clientele, and how you reach out to the community to let them know that your organization offers these services. This should also demonstrate resources that you have available to you to achieve your project, your objectives, and a description of personnel needed and how they will be selected. Another thing that's part of your grant proposal is the evaluation. Now, the evaluation section should justify the data collected. You could use surveys and other forms of justification to show the funder how you achieve the project or the objective. Now, the budget, that's a big one. People always ask. So there's sample budgets in the grant writing toolbook, but this is an issue where your budget needs to reflect your project. So use the example in the book as a guide to create your budget, and your budget will require you to collect some data on the different circumstances of your own project in your community. So you have to think about the costs associated with serving the needs of your people and compensating personnel and other expenses that should be detailed as a part of your total project cost with a proposed budget. And then future funding. Your funders will want to know if you have other monetary or in-kind donations to sustain your organization. It's imperative that you just list funders or other funders that will help your organization, even if the funds are from your own board members. Now would be a good time to stop or pause your video and write your own proposal template using the example in the grant writing toolbook as a guide. Now let's talk about the types of grants. In this section, you'll discover the most common types of grants made to nonprofit organizations and what they typically mean to organizations. You can determine what types of grants that you'll need or a foundation is willing to award through the funder's website, their annual report. They even have to file a 990. But generally, as a rule, these resources are also listed on their website. So if you're interested in a funder, you can go to their website and see what they've awarded, how much they awarded. So we're going to get into some of the terms or the different types of grants. The first one is called Grassroots Fundraising. This is the efforts to raise money from an individual or group from the local community on a broad basis. Usually an organization uses their own constituents, people you know, your neighbors, people that you serve with. So this is what most people do, grassroots fundraising. It can include membership drives, raffles, auctions, silent auctions, galas, anything that you can do to raise funds without writing a grant. The next one is capital or capital campaign. A capital grant provides support for purchase of property, the construction of a facility, remodeling or expansion of a facility, or for the purchase of equipment. Now, capital campaigns can run in the millions of dollars. So it's rare to find one foundation willing to fund the entire capital campaign. When writing capital grant proposals, emphasize what your organization will be able to accomplish once the construction or the renovation has been completed or the equipment has been purchased. So the next one is capacity building grants. Capacity building grants support initiatives allowing nonprofits to operate more effectively and efficiently and professionally. Capacity building refers to developing business skills that sustain your organization, developing the capability of communicating with supporters or donors, and developing the capability of raising more money. So each foundation defines their capacity building differently. So check out the foundation's guideline to see what they consider a valid capacity building projects. But some examples of capacity building initiatives are leadership training for your board members. That's very important. Management training for your staff members. That's important. Website, newsletters, brochures, development, fees for fundraising for consultants, or just fundraising audits, which is very important. And finally, strategic planning consultants. So that's a broad range of ways you can use capital funding. The next one is operating or general support grant. An operating grant provides support for day-to-day costs for running your nonprofit organizations. It's been said that it's nearly impossible to get a grant for this, but it's true that a lot of foundations refer to fund programs, but it's also true that many foundations understand that a nonprofit business has administrative expenses like paying salaries and keeping the lights on. So don't count that out. You'll be able to find grants for this type of service. Endowment grant. Some nonprofit organizations have an endowment fund, which is a permanent annual source of income for operating projected expenses of the organization. An endowment fund is a restricted permanent asset, and interest from the principal is used to support the nonprofit. Most universities and colleges have endowment funds. Smaller nonprofits are beginning to establish endowment funds to ensure that their work will continue. The next one is unrestricted. Now, I know everybody loves that word. Unrestricted grants allows a nonprofit to use the funds to support whatever their need is. So everybody wants to find an unrestricted grants. Unrestricted grants are the exception to the rule, though. They generally do not have spending specification, and you don't have to address a specific need. So the grant recipient determines how and where to spend the funds. Good luck on finding those. Project. A project grant supports a specific activity or service. We talked about project grant earlier. Now, the next type of grant is a seed grant. A seed grant helps jumpstart a nonprofit organization, a new project, or launch a capital campaign. Foundations understand that smaller and new startup nonprofits need help getting their organization and their programs off the ground. So seed grants can pay for salaries or the actual cost of a program. So when you're looking for a grant, look for seed grants if you're a new nonprofit. The next one is challenge or matching grant. A challenge or matching grant helps a nonprofit leverage additional dollars through a fundraising campaign. Now, these types of grants are awarded when conditions are set by the foundations, and generally they award X amount of dollars for each dollar that the nonprofit raises from another source. And you'll have to really pay attention to this, because you'll not be able to get this type of grant unless you successfully raise the matching funds from other sources. So make sure you can raise the matching funds, or at least have a very good chance of raising the matching funds before you accept this type of grant. Now, the next type of grant is one that we all hear about, the federal grant. So let's talk about the types of federal grants. There are two main types of grants available through the federal government. One is a category grant, or the block grant. The block grant also includes project, formula, and matching grants. So the categorical grant are used for specific programs such as highway programs and educational grants. They're usually called categorical grants. But block grants provide funding for eligible activities identified by your local legislation, your mayors, your county commissioners. This is for community development, for education, for health services, for crime control, and the list can go on and on. These are called Community Development Block Grants, or CDBG. And there's also local law enforcement block grants. Lastly, let's talk about the different types of foundation grants. There are 5 different types of foundation grants: community grants, family foundation grants, private individual grants, corporate foundation, and operating foundation. So we'll talk about these individually. Community grants are 501c3 organizations that make grants for charitable purposes in specific community or regions. Community foundations are primarily interested in strengthening communities in the defined geographical area. Grants provided by the community foundation stay within those communities that they serve. These funds are managed by the community foundation staff or by a governing board consisted of community leaders like you and volunteers. Family foundation. Family foundations are the most controlled by family. They're mostly controlled by family members, often multi-generational family members. So according to the Foundation Center, family foundations awarded 48%. That was over $20 billion of all private foundation grants last year. So you may encounter foundation grants that support only specific causes and don't accept proposals unless you're invited to submit them. You may also encounter foundation grants that are managed by banks. So make sure you check your local banks to see if there's foundations that provide grants to the community. Many private foundations originated by family foundations were established from an individual estate or by a group of individuals. A private individual foundation. Now this grant, it may be on a national scope confined to a specific geographic area that focus on specific purposes like heart disease, childhood nutrition, international politics. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's a great example. A corporate foundation. Corporate foundations are 501c3 foundations linked to a corporation, but they're separate entities created for the purpose of distributing a portion of the company's profits as grants. Requesting funding from a corporate foundation is the same as with other private foundations. Not all corporations have a separate foundation. If you're looking for cash donations or in-kind donations, which come from the company's marketing and budget, remember that comes with their marketing and budget portion, contact the company rather than their foundation. The next one is an operating foundation. Operating foundation conduct their own charitable program activities, and they usually do not award grants. So where do you find grants? Okay, I know this is the part we've all been waiting for. The big list on where to find grants. In this section, I'll discuss a few websites, but the entire list of websites is on where to find grants will be listed in the Grant Tools books. So as we all know, technology changes, businesses close, even foundations close. So always verify the information. It's always best to start locally though when you're searching for a grant. Your local or regional community foundation is a great starting point. They are no cost to look online. They have a database where you can locate a community foundation near you. The Council on Foundation, which is cfo.org, is a great website. The Grantsmanship Center is a great website. They are websites where you can search and do not pay a fee. So there's no fee to search on the Grantsman website. They will list some of the top corporate giving programs, which is searchable by state. So once you've located a corporate giving program in your state, you can either research their grant opportunities on the corporation's website, but generally you'll find information listed under the word community or community investment or corporate citizenship. So make sure you look for that when you go to those sites. To find state grants, search the state's website or your state government homepage, like your city. If you live in Orlando, look at the city of Orlando. If you live in Texas, look at the city of Texas to find for your state websites. You can also find city council and city and county grants on their websites as well. The Foundation Center is one of my favorite, foundationcenter.org. It's a premier source for locating foundations and corporate grants. It has a wealth of information, including foundation grants to individuals online. Yes, there are a few to individuals, but the Foundation Center can also be accessed for free at one of your libraries. The foundation has multiple, probably like over 800,000 different foundations, corporations, and other organizations that give, but you have to pay to have access to that. You may want to search your local library to have that may have purchased this access, and save yourself thousands of dollars. But if you want to be a grant writer, it's best to pay to have access to that database. So the foundation's corporate giving online database is searchable, and they have different subscription levels. So in addition to corporate grant makers, you can search for corporations providing cash donations, corporations that provide in-kind donations, professional service, and volunteers. Now, government grants, there is no reason to pay to search for government grants. That's easy. You just go to grants.gov, not grants.com. Make sure it's grants.gov. So GOV, this is the best place to search for federal grants. You can sign up to receive daily announcements, search for grants by specific programs, or search for grants being offered in all 26 different federal agencies. There's so many. So bear in mind that there are few federal grants available to individuals. Most federal grants are issued to universities, hospitals, libraries, and nonprofit organizations. So now we have discussed common grant terms, how to write your grant proposal, types of grants, and where to find grants. So all I have to say to you is, it's time for you to stop, get to writing, and go get that money.